Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, when we explore these worlds of really specialized, almost hidden knowledge, whether it's something like ancient alchemy or, in this case, traditional martial arts, there's almost always this fascinating barrier, right?
Absolutely. The most definitive sources, the real core texts, are often locked away.
Right. They're behind layers of ritual or a language barrier that's just immense, or sometimes they're physically too rare to even find.
And you see this tension, between keeping a tradition pure and actually spreading it. An oral tradition is alive, it's dynamic, but it can also change with every single generation.
It drifts.
It drifts, exactly.
Yeah.
So when a master finally decides to codify it, to put their entire life's work down on paper, that creates this incredible moment of certainty. It's not just a theory anymore, it's a blueprint, an irrefutable blueprint.
And that is exactly what we're getting into today. We are going deep into the source material on one of the most authoritative, most comprehensive, and yet one of the most stubbornly difficult to access publications in the entire history of Chinese martial arts.
It's a big one.
It is. So our mission here is to give you, the listener, a fast but thorough understanding of the sheer scale of this record, the incredible figure who created it, and this paradox that the definitive knowledge is actually facing physical extinction.
We're dissecting all the information we have around the Encyclopedia of Shaolin Martial Arts. It's also known as the Shaolin Kung Fu Encyclopedia.
And that's the central artifact for our deep dive today.
It is a massive 4-volume body of work, and it's authored by the 31st generation heir of the temple, Shedi Kuan.
So that's the goal right there. We want to give you the insight to really appreciate why this isn't just another kung fu book on the shelf. We have to unpack the depth of this thing, the thousands of pages, the millions of words, the drawings, to really get what it means, especially now before its rarity makes it something we can only debate as a piece of history.
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right, let's unpack this. The moment you even start to read about the Shaolin Kung Fu Encyclopedia, the first thing that just hits you is the scale.
It's overwhelming.
Right. Forget your standard paperback manual. The source material lays out these physical details that immediately tell you this isn't just a book, it's a project of almost unprecedented documentation.
And that scale, that's the first clue that you're looking at institutional history. You're not just looking at one person's opinion or their interpretation.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when you talk about definitive records in any field, be it science or history or art volume, often equals authority. Sheer size implies a certain level of exhaustive effort.
That makes sense. And the raw numbers here, they are just mind-boggling. Our sources detail them. We're talking about 4 volumes in total.
For separate large volumes.
Over 4,000 pages. And get this, within those pages, there are 3.8 million characters.
3.8 million. Let that sink in.
That's not a typo. That's the real number.
And you have to think about the logistics of that. This work was finished in 1992. Sure, word processors existed, but the sheer effort of researching, drafting, editing, illustrating, and then proofreading a text that's the size of, 10 huge novels.
Before digital collaboration was easy, yeah.
It's a Herculean task.
Yeah.
It implies a systematic organization of literally centuries of knowledge. This wasn't some greatest hits collection. This was intended to be a complete, exhaustive archive of the entire system.
It really does sound less like a book and more like a library, which brings up a really important quotient about the content. If you have almost 4 million characters to describe a system, what level of detail are you actually getting into?
We have to be talking about profound granularity. There's no other way to fill 4,000 pages. You're not just saying do a punch. You're detailing every single hand position, every tiny shift in your center of gravity, every possible application for a movement. And you're doing that across dozens and dozens of distinct forms.
Just the physics of the system.
The physics, the mechanics, the principles. It's the how and the why. And that's the stuff that is usually the most closely guarded secret in any martial art.
And the detail doesn't stop with the text. This is what's crucial for a physical discipline. The encyclopedia has over 1,000 diagrams and drawings.
1,000. And honestly, those diagrams might be the single most important element for preserving the art.
Why do you say that?
Because text alone, especially when you're trying to describe a complex physical movement, is always going to be a little ambiguous. If I write down execute a crane wing block, what does that actually mean?
It could mean 100 different things, depending on who your teacher was.
Precisely. A good diagram, a high-quality drawing, it removes that ambiguity. It can show you the exact angle of the wrist, how your weight is distributed on your feet, the orientation of your shoulders to your hips. These tiny details that make the technique work.
So 1,000 diagrams suggest he was documenting not just the big movements, but all those little checkpoints in between.
Exactly. It's a difference between learning the general shape of a move and learning its underlying geometric truth. He's trying to combat that natural drift that happens over generations when things are only passed down orally.
It's an anchor.
It's the ultimate anchor.
Mm-hmm.
If 100 years from now the oral tradition has shifted, a student can go back to these diagrams from 1992 and say, hold on, the 31st generation heir codified it this way. It basically institutionalizes the definition of what is correct.
So let's talk about the specific content being preserved here. The source material says it shows traditional Shaolin martial arts forms, which are known as quans. For anyone who might not be familiar, let's really define what a quan is.
Right, so quan can be translated as fist or set, but really they're the fundamental teaching structures in Chinese martial arts. They are these incredibly sophisticated, choreographed sequences of movements. In the West, you'd probably call them forms or katas.
But there's so much more than just a dance, right?
Oh, far more. A quan is the entire curriculum, all condensed into one routine. It packages your offense, your defense, your footwork, your balance, your internal cultivation. Yeah, it's all in there.
So when you practice a quan, you're practicing everything at once.
You're practicing the entire library of techniques for that style simultaneously. You're training muscle memory, coordination, and that internal energy flow, or shu. The real depth of a style is often measured by how complex and how numerous its quans are.
So if this encyclopedia contains the definitive documentation of the Shaolin quans, it's literally the complete systematic library of the temple's movements all written down.
Yes, and the source goes even further. It adds a really vital piece of information. The encyclopedia also includes the traditional Shaolin weapons quans, which means the documentation is truly comprehensive. It covers the entire spectrum of their combat knowledge, from empty hands to weapons.
And weapons just add this exponential layer of complexity, don't they? You're not just dealing with the physics of your own body anymore.
Exactly. Now you're dealing with the inertia, the balance, the application of a staff or a spear or a sword. Each one of those is its own specialized discipline.
So including the weapons forms, that's a massive commitment.
Huge. Think about the specialized knowledge you need just to document how to properly handle a Shaolin staff, the gun, the leverage, the speed, the targeting, to include the definitive record of all those weapons forms alongside the empty hand forms. That's what really cements this text's status as the complete single-source reference for the entire system.
Which brings us to the recognition this work has, which is so critical. Our source material states that it's recognized as the most definitive publication of their system.
And that phrase, I mean, that's like a thunderclap in the martial arts world. Definitive means there is no more argument. This is it. This is the standard against which everything else is measured.
And this isn't just an external assessment.
Not at all. The source confirms this internal validation. It says the encyclopedia is highly treasured and recognized by northern China Shaolin monks.
So this isn't some popular book written by an outside scholar. This is an official endorsement from the people who inherited the tradition.
Precisely. And that recognition elevates the work to the level of canon. When the current custodians of the tradition, the monks themselves, look at this and say, yes, this is the authoritative record, that is the highest seal of authenticity you can possibly get.
It makes it a foundational text.
It becomes the constitution of modern traditional Shaolin practice, at least as it was understood and practiced up to its publication in 1992.
But, and this is a massive but, there is this huge firewall separating all of this definitive knowledge from the rest of the world. And this really explains its rarity and the mystique around it. The source is very clear. The books are published in Mandarin and are explicitly noted as not available in the English language.
And that language barrier is just monumental. We're talking about 4,000 pages of the official constitution of Shaolin knowledge, and it is effectively closed off to most of the world.
It's not just about translating words from one language to another, is it?
Oh, not at all. It's a translation issue of highly specialized, culturally embedded terminology. Think about trying to translate concepts like Dantian, the field of elixir, or Jin, develop power.
Or even the names of specific bone-setting techniques.
Exactly. When you try to move those concepts from Mandarin into English, you're always fighting a losing battle to capture the full cultural and physical context. The terms themselves contain philosophies, anatomical theories about meridian points and chi pathways that just don't have perfect English equivalents.
So by staying in Mandarin, the knowledge is kept pure.
It's preserved in its most uncompromised form. It's only accessible to those who have both the linguistic skill and the cultural background to really appreciate the nuance. It acts as an incredibly effective filter.
Which creates this profound paradox, doesn't it? The most authentic, most comprehensive source exists, but its authenticity is structurally protected by the very barrier that makes it functionally inaccessible to the vast majority of international students or scholars who would want to study it.
And we also just have to acknowledge the sheer volume of the work. Translating 3.8 million characters plus captioning 1,000 diagrams. That's a massive academic project. It would take years, require specialized funding, and very niche expertise. The fact that there isn't an English version isn't just an oversight. It's a reflection of how incredibly difficult and expensive that task would be.
And that difficulty, that expense, ties directly into the rarity we're going to talk about later. A work of this size, of this authority, it doesn't just happen. It requires an author with not just knowledge, but an unquestionable mandate to write it. So we have to talk about the man who created it, Shi de Quin.
Yes, understanding the author is absolutely essential to understanding the gravity of the encyclopedia itself.
Our source material introduces him by his origins. He was born Cheng King Wang, and his nickname was Evergreen. And his biography is just completely tied to the heart of the tradition. He was born in Henan Province, China, in the shadow of the now famous temple, the Song Sand Mountain Shaolin Temple.
So he didn't just find his way to the temple later in life. He was literally born into its sphere of influence, immersed in the culture and geography from birth.
That proximity is the foundation, sure, but his real authority, it comes from his position within the lineage.
And this is where the mandate becomes just staggering. Our source states that Shi de Quin is the 31st generation heir of the master of the Song Sand Mountain Shaolin Temple.
31 generations.
Just pause on that for a second. 31 generations. That is a lineage that potentially spans centuries. It links him directly back through a chain of masters to the deep origins of the Shaolin system.
So the knowledge he's documenting has been tested, refined, and passed down through countless historical upheavals, wars, political changes.
He's a living repository of that history. And what's more, the source confirms he was also the previous Fang Zhang,
Which means
first abbot or headmaster. This position means he wasn't just a senior martial artist. He was the spiritual, administrative, and doctrinal head of the entire temple. His job wasn't just teaching forms. It was overseeing the monastic community, preserving the Buddhist faith, and ensuring the continuity of the entire institution.
so a 31st generation heir and a former abbot. When he decides to write the definitive Encyclopedia, he's writing not just as a brilliant martial artist, but as the official historian, the philosopher, and the custodian of the entire tradition.
There is simply no higher source. You can't get more official than that. His documentation carries the full weight of institutional validation, not just his personal skill. If he included a certain form, it's because that form was historically recognized and taught at the highest standard of the temple.
Let's talk about the devotion it takes to get to that level. He was admitted to the temple at just 15 years old.
A very young age.
And he became a disciple of Master Sun Shushan, starting his rigorous study of Gong Fu.
And he committed his life to it. He stayed at the temple for 31 years, right up until 1992, which, not coincidentally, is the year the encyclopedia was completed.
And his official role during that time, this is fascinating. He was a Shaolin protection monk.
Right. And that phrase, protection monk, it conjures up all these images of legendary temple guardians, doesn't it?
It really does. What does that role actually imply about the intensity of his training versus, say, a general teaching monk?
Well, historically, the role of protection monk was incredibly demanding. It meant you were the temple's last line of defense. Your training would have been geared much less toward aesthetic performance and much more toward real-world combat readiness.
So pure function.
Pure function. Skills related to disarming, neutralizing threats, enduring extreme physical hardship, and operating under intense pressure. They would have needed to master a much broader and probably more aggressive range of techniques than might be required in standard monastic forms.
So for 31 years, the knowledge Shi de Quin was accumulating wasn't theoretical. It was practical, it was battle-tested, it was applied.
Exactly. And that experience would have given him a completely unique perspective when he sat down to document the forms. He wouldn't just be recording the flow of a movement. He'd be recording its practical, potentially destructive application.
He knows what that strike can do in a life or death situation.
Which gives the encyclopedia a layer of realism and depth that a purely academic document could never, ever possess.
And this brings us to what might be the most unique part of his expertise. It's so important for understanding the holistic nature of Shaolin. We might assume that a protection monk and an abbot would be focused solely on fighting, but our source material shows he mastered so much more.
And this is the definitive insight into the whole Shaolin tradition. The ancient Chinese worldview sees the body, combat, health, and healing as inseparable. You can't be a true master if you only know how to break the body.
You have to know how to fix it.
You have to know how to fix it. And the list of his skills in our source just underscores this perfectly. In addition to his martial arts mastery, Shi De Khan learned the art of acupuncture. He also mastered Qi Kung bone treatment.
Right.
And on top of all that, he is an accredited Chinese herbalist.
Wow. That combination, it proves that his knowledge base is completely integrated.
It is. But let's just break down the synergy there. Take acupuncture. That's the mastery of the body's meridian system, the pathways of qi energy.
So if he understands the specific energy pathways and pressure points that you can manipulate with a needle for healing, what does that mean for how he thinks about striking?
It fundamentally changes the entire intent of every strike that he documents. A basic fighter, they aim for mass and power. A master with deep knowledge of acupuncture aims for specific points that can disrupt the flow of qi.
Causing paralysis or disorientation.
Or even long-term injury with a seemingly light touch. So when Shi Dakin documents a technique in that encyclopedia, he's documenting the physical mechanics plus the intended energetic target. His written kwans almost certainly contain subtle diagrams or notes pointing to these vulnerable meridian points.
That adds a whole new dimension to the encyclopedia. It's not just a manual of external movement. It's an internal map for both energetic disruption and restoration.
And then you have the Qigong bone treatment. This is the traditional martial arts method for dealing with structural injuries, breaks, dislocations, bad sprains, all the things that happen in training and combat.
So if he spent decades literally setting bones and rehabilitating injuries inside the temple, he has this incredibly intimate, hands-on understanding of joint mechanics, skeletal fragility, the kinetic limits of the human body.
And that knowledge directly influences the training methodology he would document. He knows which techniques are inherently dangerous, which are safer for long-term practice, and crucially, how to structure training to reinforce the body's integrity against the incredible demands of the art.
So his documentation isn't just about execution. It's about safety, conditioning, and avoiding injury, all learned from firsthand clinical experience.
Right. And then finally, you have the accreditation as a Chinese herbalist. That brings in the pharmacology, the internal medicine side of things. Traditional martial arts rely heavily on specific diets, medicinal wines, and herbal formulas to strengthen bones, heal torn muscles, and promote the health of your internal organs. As an accredited herbalist, Shi Daquan would possess the knowledge to provide the entire comprehensive training package.
The external movement, the targeted energetic strikes.
And the internal pharmaceutical support you need to sustain that high-level practice. So the encyclopedia isn't just a record of fighting techniques, it's a complete system. It encompasses combat, medicine, anatomy, and conditioning, all documented by a man who is simultaneously the highest religious authority, the chief of security, and the temple physician.
That synthesis. That's why his work is recognized as the most definitive. The knowledge is whole, it's integrated, and it's validated by the deepest possible understanding of the human machine.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Now let's focus back on his specific martial arts specializations, which the sources highlight. He excels in Lohan Chuan 1818 style, He Hu Chuan, and Yi Yunqing.
Okay, so those three forms represent a very balanced and advanced syllabus. Lohan Chuan, which is sometimes called the 18 Arhat hands, is often seen as a classical foundational set. It establishes all the core Shaolin principles.
So mastering that shows a deep understanding of the basics.
A profound understanding, yes. Then you have He Hu Chuan, which is Black Tiger Fist.
That sounds aggressive.
It sounds like a very application-heavy, aggressive style. It was likely geared toward the functional requirements of a protection monk. Immediate conflict resolution. It speaks to the external, dynamic fighting part of his training.
And the last one, Yi Yunqing.
Yi Yunqing. The muscle and tendon change classic. This one is almost legendary. It's a form of internal exercise, a type of qigong that's used for conditioning, for cultivating qi, and for strengthening the body's entire internal structure.
So it's the internal side of things.
Exactly. Its inclusion confirms that his mastery spans the entire spectrum, from the foundational external forms of Lohan to the aggressive application of He Hu, all the way to the deepest internal cultivation with Yi Yunqing. He's a complete master.
And all of this high-level integrated knowledge is precisely what he poured into the documentation for posterity. The source also notes that the publication happened with the help of his sifu, his master, Shi Shu.
And that's the final layer of quality control, isn't it? The involvement of his own teacher guarantees the integrity of the work. This wasn't some rogue project he did on his own.
It was a formal transmission.
It was a formal, approved transmission of knowledge. By involving his own master, Shi Khan ensured that the knowledge he was capturing reflected not just his own brilliant interpretation, but the continuous, vetted lineage from the previous generation. It turns a personal project into an official, canonical lineage document.
So we have this massive, definitive 4-volume encyclopedia, and it's authored by a 31st generation former abbot with this just unparalleled holistic expertise. But the story takes this really fascinating and surprising turn when we look at Shi Daquin's status after the book was completed in 1992.
Right, he leaves the temple.
He leaves the temple and becomes a Shaolin layman monk.
And this is such a crucial piece of cultural context. It gives you a key insight into the flexibility of the Shaolin tradition. The term layman monk, or jushi, might sound like it implies a lesser commitment, but the reality, as our source specifies, is far more precise.
This is the ultimate aha moment, I think. It's about the difference between spiritual dedication and just lifestyle constraints. Layman monks, they retain their status, they retain their knowledge base, on par with the monks still living inside the temple walls.
But the differences are astonishingly specific.
According to the source, the only differences are they can eat meat, drink beer, and consume other foods and beverages.
That detail is so telling, isn't it? It means that the core commitment, the 31st generation status, the mastery of the forms, the medical expertise, the spiritual practice, all of that is entirely retained.
So the separation from the temple environment, the shift to layman status, it's basically a dietary and residency decision. It's not an abandonment of the tradition itself.
Not at all. He retains the full gravity of his knowledge while gaining the physical freedom he needs to operate in the outside world.
Which includes publishing a monumental encyclopedia.
Exactly. That freedom is likely what enabled him to take on the Herculean task of organizing and compiling the text without the daily administrative duties of being the Fang Zhang, the abbot. The layman status allowed him to work on ensuring the system's survival from the outside, operating as this autonomous, high-ranking archivist.
And this all relates directly back to the whole point of the encyclopedia. The source talks about the driving force behind it. Shi Daquin still writes many Shaolin Kung Fu books, but this encyclopedia, it was explicitly published to reveal and preserve the secrets of the Shaolin system for posterity.
And the key word there, I think, is reveal. We have to focus on that. For generations, the core Shaolin knowledge, especially things related to internal qi cultivation, pressure points, and those specialized bone treatments, that was all closely guarded. It was often only passed down to a single trusted successor.
So for the highest authority in the system to consciously decide to publish these secrets in a 4,000-page document, that's a monumental shift in philosophy.
It really is. The question is, why do that? Why break with generations of secrecy?
It feels like an acknowledgement of the modern world, a cultural preservation strategy.
I think so. The Shaolin Temple has been through so much political turmoil, cultural revolutions, periods where knowledge was destroyed or suppressed. By codifying and publishing the entire system, even in a limited access language, Shi Daquin was creating a permanent physical record. It's an intellectual failsafe.
It's an insurance policy.
It's a cultural insurance policy against historical chaos. If the temple were ever again dispersed, or if the oral lineage was tragically broken, future generations could recover the definitive truth of the system from these 4 volumes. He prioritized the long-term survival of the tradition over the short-term exclusivity of the knowledge.
But now we hit this chilling reality check. And it directly undermines this massive preservation effort. The rarity of the physical books themselves, access to this definitive text is rapidly closing.
Yeah, this part is tough.
The source material states that there are only approximately 20 sets of the encyclopedia left in stock.
20. That number is horrifying. 20 sets of what is, by internal consensus, the most definitive publication of one of the world's most famous martial arts.
That's nothing.
It's nothing. That tiny number means the book has already stopped being a circulating resource. It's transitioning into a museum-quality artifact. For comparison, most major academic books, they have print runs in the thousands.
And this scarcity is being driven by a very specific, very modern reason. The source is absolutely clear. The books will not be reprinted.
And this is the core of the modern preservation dilemma, isn't it? The effort to document was a huge success, but the economics of keeping it accessible are failing.
The source gives the exact reason why this record is going extinct. The minimum cost for reprinting is prohibitively high. It's listed as over $70,000 USD.
$70,000 just to get the next print run started.
Let's think about why that cost would be so high for a book, especially one for such a niche audience.
Well, you're dealing with a few factors that would drive that cost way up. First, it's a specialized archival text. You'd want to print it on highly durable, acid-free paper to make sure it lasts. That's expensive.
And the sheer volume, 4,000 pages across 4 hardcover volumes, that's a lot of material and binding.
A lot. And then you have the 1,000 diagrams. Those would need high-quality printing presses and skilled labor to make sure they're clear and accurate. You can't just run those off in a cheap press. And all of that is much more expensive when you're doing a limited print run.
So if the publisher or the author doesn't have a guaranteed distribution channel or just, $70,000 sitting around, this critical knowledge gets bottlenecked by the printing press itself.
And it creates this real moral and cultural tension. The knowledge was meant for posterity, but the physical vehicle for that knowledge is restricted by a 5-figure financial barrier. The moment those last 20 sets are sold, the physical books will only ever move between wealthy collectors.
They could just disappear into private libraries.
Exactly. Permanently cutting off access for the average dedicated student or the academic researcher who might need it most.
So this raises a serious question about the future of this kind of traditional specialized knowledge. If you succeed in creating the definitive record, but the economic system makes it impossible to disseminate, what are the alternatives? Could they digitize it?
Digitization is always an option, technologically speaking. But it comes with its own set of trade-offs, especially when you think about the Shaolin philosophy of control and purity.
Right. Scanning the 4,000 pages would solve the physical scarcity problem overnight.
But it opens up a new Pandora's box: authenticity control. If you digitize it, that content could spread worldwide instantly. And yes, that would fulfill the mission of posterity, but you'd also be exposing the material to corruption, misinterpretation, or unauthorized commercial use.
All the things the original Mandarin-only firewall was designed to prevent.
Precisely. The source material emphasizes Shidi Queen's authoritative lineage and his devotion to purity. The decision to keep it in a limited print run and its original language, that reinforced a certain level of control. Moving to a digital format means surrendering that control completely. In a very strange way, that $70,000 price tag might be the ultimate preservation tool now. It ensures only a highly dedicated select few can access the most unadulterated source.
So the very act of making these definitive secrets public for posterity is now being paradoxically reversed by the economic reality of just printing books. The information we're talking about today is about a body of knowledge that's rapidly transitioning from a living textbook into a sealed historical artifact.
And that transition, that's the biggest tragedy here. The master's intention was to reveal and preserve the secrets for the future. The current reality is that scarcity is reimposing secrecy, but this time it's not based on tradition. It's based on currency. Hashtag OTUOU Sappho.
This deep dive has taken us so much further than just a simple book review. We've really analyzed the creation of a definitive cultural artifact. We covered the unparalleled scale of the 4-volume encyclopedia. 4,000 pages, 3.8 million characters detailing every single aspect of the Shaolin system.
And we really explored the deep, multifaceted authority of the author, Shidi Quan, a 31st generation heir, a former abbot, who synthesized combat mastery from Lohan Chuan to He Hu Chuan with this comprehensive medical expertise. He mastered everything from acupuncture to Qigong bone treatment. That holistic perspective is what guaranteed the integrity of the whole work.
We also got that fascinating insight into the unique status of the Shaolin layman monk, realizing that Shidi Quan's ability to even do this massive archiving project came after he shed only the dietary rules of the monastery while retaining the full weight of his knowledge and his spiritual dedication.
It was a conscious, strategic choice for the survival of the system. But the core tension we uncovered, I think, is that financial choke point. The most authoritative secrets were revealed for the future, yet only about 20 sets remain. And the cost of keeping that knowledge in its pure physical form is over $70,000.
It leaves us with a final, really unavoidable question.
It does. Given that Shidi Quan, a master of such profound lineage and authority, chose to document and publish the secrets of the Shaolin system for posterity, only for access to be cut off by a high reprinting cost, What does this tell us about the future of traditional specialized knowledge in our world?
It's a sobering thought.
If the preservation of authenticity now requires such an immense five-figure financial investment just to overcome modern logistical barriers, how much other priceless traditional knowledge, whether it's a martial arts or healing or any ancient craft, is currently facing extinction? Not because the masters didn't write it down, but simply because the cost of paper, ink, and binding has made the definitive archive inaccessible. When financial scarcity is what seals away knowledge meant for posterity, does that financial barrier become the new, unintended guardian of the secrets? That's something to mull over until next time.